Our best work emerges during periods of high productivity. Right, well, what does this mean? I remember growing up and hearing the phrase quality over quantity. Right? The implication being that we should focus on the quality of the task. That one good painting or drawing outweighs multiple paintings or drawings that are done in less time with less precision. And on the surface, that makes sense, right? Why would you want anything but optimal output? And I adopted this philosophy, and I hadn't really thought about it much until I came across a study mentioned by James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits. And in this study, there was a photography professor at the University of Florida, and he divided his photography students into two groups, the left side of the room and the right side of the room. The left side of the room would be the quantity group, which means they'd be graded on the number of photos they took. So 100 photos would be an A, 90 would be a B, so on and so on. The right side of the room would be the quality group. They would be graded on how good their work was, but they only had to produce one photo in the semester, right? It had to be a pretty much immaculate picture. And at the end of the term, the professor was surprised to find that the left side, or the quality group, the group that produced over and over again, had far better pictures than the right side that only had to produce one. Because through that process, they honed their craft, they gathered skills, and they became better photographers. This study shows that the way to quality is through quantity. And what got me wasn't so much the idea that success takes repetition, but it was all the times that I'd worked so hard to be precise, that I'd spent days writing and crafting and editing, when in reality, I could have completed 4 different projects in the same amount of time. And the numbers seemed to point to the conclusion that if I'd done that by the 4th project, I'd be better off than sticking to one and revising it a million times. In fact, I remember being hired to write a song for an indie film, and I don't do a ton of that, so it was like, I'm going to be super meticulous here. And I wrote it, I sent it to some folks for feedback, and then I literally spent a week editing and EQing and changing the volume, adjusting the plugins, adding, removing, and I'll never forget sending it out again to those same people for a second round of feedback, and most of them couldn't even hear a difference, right? The adjustments that seemed so big to me because I'm in it every day went over their heads, right? In the grand scheme of things, they were insignificant. Now, this was a specific project, so a little different circumstances, but the theme applies. All that writing, editing, tweaking, perfecting, when you can be doing more, learning more, going further, getting more shots on net. At some point, the law of averages comes into effect, right? The more times you put yourself out there, the better the chance you'll stumble upon something incredible. The more swings you take, the better your odds for hitting the long ball, right? But what we learn is that's not even the best part, right? The upside is that the more swings you take, the quicker you develop and the more powerful you become every time you connect. You become a better hitter. Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google, summed it up perfectly when he said that the only way you're going to have success is to have lots of failures first. The idea of getting the less optimal stuff out of the way. Or as I've talked about before, Ed Sheeran, right, talking about all those hours of bad songwriting it took to get him to his level of mastery. It is through high productivity that our relationship with the pursuit is transformed. We learn about our process as much as we learn about ourselves, and it becomes more clear that waiting for the perfect moment or exhausting all energy on that perfect shot will ultimately leave us short of the goal, because true mastery comes from putting the outcome aside and immersing yourself in a process that will, little by little, create that elusive quality that otherwise would have never been obtained.